And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in New Mexico.
John, here's another story that so many of our listeners sent to us overnight, whether it's through the email at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com or our respective Twitter accounts. A COO of a nonprofit for harm reduction in San Diego has been busted for extortion when she took money that was meant for Narcan and used it on breast implants.
How much of that do you think is going on here?
A lot. I don't know if a lot of it is going towards cosmetic surgery, but I bet you there is so much money going towards things like harm reduction and homeless services that is just a straight up grift.
You know what? I'd rather have the money going to fake boobs than going to those organizations to do harm in the parks and the libraries and the streets of the state.
A case could be made.
At least with fake boobs, someone gets to enjoy them.
She also went to Disneyland.
Maybe it was Mickey. I doubt it was Chip and Dale, though. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the National Director of Research at the American Federation for Children. You can get him online at federationforchildren.org and follow him on X at Deangelis Corey. And it was just announced recently that he has a new gig with the Heritage Foundation. So congratulations on that. Corey Deangelis. Corey, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. So we've got all kinds of chaos going on here in California right now, where yesterday we played sound of Cecily Mayart Cruz, who is the president of UTLA, who lambasted the superintendent and the Board of Education in Los Angeles for not giving the workforce, not just her union, but other unions, including the support staff, the classified personnel, more money. They voted, the teachers in LA, to authorize a strike in solidarity with the classified staff. In San Francisco, that union, the teachers union, went on strike for 5 days. There was no instruction going on in that city. They said they were going to hold out until they got everything they wanted. They got everything they wanted. And the school district really doesn't have the money to pay for it. They're dipping into their reserve account to pay for it. But what happens when you exhaust whatever it is that's in that account? I don't know how you expect to pay for the health care and the wage increases and everything else that they were able to negotiate over the course of that strike. Then, at the same time, we have the teachers unions in Berkeley and in Oakland who both voted to authorize a strike. And in Oakland, the teachers union goes on strike so often, they said yesterday on the news that they don't even bother to print new signs for the picket line. They just saved the signs that they had from the last time and the time before that, and they have a warehouse where they keep them all, and they just bring them back out so they can go on strike the next time. Your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, the problem is even FDR had it right, where the public sector should not be able to strike. The public sector unions are a cancer on society, and the taxpayers get the short end of the stick. They basically, there's no accountability when a private sector, employee union were to go on strike. Let's say like all the employees at Walmart wanted to go on strike. That would be kind of uncomfortable for customers, but at least you'd be able to vote with your feet and take your money elsewhere. The problem is in places like California, you don't have any accountability mechanism from the bottom up with school choice. People can't take their money somewhere else. So this is the same reason why the schools were so closed for so long during the COVID era, is because people were basically held hostage. Children's education was held hostage because the unions knew they could use that pain as a leverage point at the bargaining table with their employer. So the employer doesn't really feel a lot of pain in the public sector when there's a strike. The teachers unions don't really aren't really at much risk themselves because they're still going to keep their jobs. And who gets screwed over and over again? It's the parents and the kids with the school system. So we shouldn't allow these strikes. And, if they're going to have them, you should at least have school choice so that people could say, you know what, if you guys can't figure it out at the bargaining table, well, I'm going to go to a private school or a charter school, or maybe I just want to homeschool. I mean, nationwide, we're spending $20,000 a kid. It's more in California. And for what? You just have this vicious cycle of the unions holding taxpayers and kids hostage just to get all the little goodies that they want, but it doesn't improve the outcomes in the education system. Our outcomes have actually gotten worse in a lot of places, and nothing's ever going to change. It's never going to change if they keep getting what they want and just having zero accountability for those additional dollars.
What do you make of the fact that they seem not to be worried in the slightest that the concessions that they're winning are going to push these districts into bankruptcy? Because some of them, in theory, teach math and they understand that the money is not there to pay them what the districts have agreed to. Do they just assume that any Democratic politician in California who's elected governor is going to be forced to bail them out? Otherwise, the teachers' unions will come down on them like a ton of bricks?
That's the problem. If you look at the teachers' unions' campaign contributions, the NEA, the AFT, and their state affiliates, 99% of their campaign contributions go to Democrats every single election cycle. It's a form of money laundering, and it causes this kind of inability for Democrat politicians who are owned by the teachers unions to do the right things for kids and families and for taxpayers. And so they keep continuing to vote to throw more money at the problem without any guardrails and without any parental empowerment. So, it shouldn't surprise us that the outcomes aren't getting any better, especially when they're injecting a lot of political crap into the school system as well. You look at all across the country right now, these anti-ICE protests, that didn't bubble up out of nowhere. I mean, last year there were these Los Angeles riots that were happening in the summertime. And guess who was there rallying the troops? It was Becky Pringle, who's an at-large member of the DNC, but she's also the head of the nation's largest teachers union. That's her main gig, where she makes about $500,000 a year to stoke division. And at their annual convention last year in Portland, Oregon, of all places, they passed all these resolutions that read more like a declaration of war on the Trump administration than anything else. They elevated to their teacher of the year a person who said on stage that her job as a teacher was, quote unquote, deeply political and always had been. But they passed a resolution at this meeting to mobilize students against ICE and Trump's policies. And so it shouldn't surprise us we see all these student walkouts. Of course, the students want to get out of class, but it requires real leadership from the adults in the system to do the right thing and to not allow kids to skip class. If it was for any other reason, I mean, when I was going to public school, if we left to just go have lunch and we weren't seniors, we weren't allowed to do so. So they were somehow able to facilitate people staying on campus and having students safe in their classrooms throughout the day when it comes to issues that are not their political flavor of the week. But when it comes to the thing that they would like people to protest, they're doing nothing. The teachers' unions are doing nothing to stopping it. And so I think that's another great argument for why parents should have more of a say, because if they don't want their kids indoctrinated with far left politics, well, if they do, they should still be able to keep sending their kid there. But if not, parents should be able to say, you know what, the heck with this. I want my kids to learn how to read and do math. So I'm going to take my money somewhere else, even if it's half, even if it's $10,000 as opposed to $20,000. I bet you a lot of parents would take that deal. And we're seeing in red states, at least right now, a school choice revolution where you have so many families voting with their feet. Homeschooling has at least doubled since 2019. And it's because the unions are doing all this crap with the strikes, putting families in limbo, and injecting politics into the schools.
What does the future of big urban districts in blue states look like to you? And I ask that question because we know what's going on with the population of the state as a whole, where the high cost of living is pushing people out. The state of California will likely lose between 3 and 5 congressional districts after the next census, and we know where that population is going. It's going to Arizona, it's going to Nevada, it's going to Florida, it's going to Texas, Idaho, Tennessee, red states all over the nation, and some purple states as well. We know that Republicans have more kids than Democrats. We've seen this reflected in any number of polls, any number of statistics that have been published. Republicans are just having more babies right now. And then with the deportations, we've seen a lot of people who are in the country illegally either sent back by the government to their country of origin, or they're choosing to self-deport and they're leaving and they're bringing their kids with them. When you add all of this up together, what you end up with is enrollment in free fall in places like Oakland, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. You can't justify having schools that don't have students, schools that are kept open that have no one to go and attend them. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. But you get to a point to where you're bankrupt, you don't have any money left, you don't have any customers because the kids aren't showing up to the schools the way that they used to. What happens?
Yeah, I think you just called it, John, is that, these government school systems have become more of a jobs program for adults and an education initiative for kids. I just saw a post going around before I got on air of Chicago. They have data since 2019. The number of students in their system has dropped by about 35,000, and that's about a 10% decrease in their customer base, basically, the number of students. But if you look on the other hand, their employment, their staffing has grown by about 6,000 or 7,000, about a 20% increase in staff alongside a 10% decrease in students. In what other industry do you lose 10% of your customer base and then you go on a hiring spree? It just goes to show you that the customers have zero say and the taxpayers are stuck footing the bill. But at some point, you're right, those taxpayers are going to say, what in the world are we paying for? I remember some headlines a couple years ago of Chicago having some schools that were at 3% of capacity, basically empty schools getting all this taxpayer funding, and it becomes so obvious that this is just a jobs program and it has nothing to do with education. They're just lining the pockets of their people that they have in the unions that are pushing their political agenda, and kids aren't being educated. And even if there were kids in the school, they're not adequately educating those kids. In 55 Chicago public schools, they have not a single kid proficient in math. In Baltimore, they have 40% of their high schools have 0% math proficiency, and they spend so much money. So I think this ruins deep blue cities. It causes people to leave. That's why red states are seeing an influx of the population. And the Census Bureau, if you look at the Census Bureau's projections for which states are expected in the next census to gain seats and those that are expected to lose seats, all 8 or so that they have definite gains, those are all states with universal school choice. On the flip side, you look at all the states that are almost guaranteed to lose seats, California, New York, and others, all of those have no meaningful school choice options. So parents are voting with their feet when it comes to, there's a mass exodus. About 1 million kids have left the public school system in recent years. But you look at charter schools, they've seen about a 7% increase in enrollment. Homeschooling has doubled, and school choice programs are passing like crazy in red states in particular. And in blue states, teachers are leaving their unions because they see that it's gotten so political, and the unions don't even spend their money on the teachers. It's going towards campaign activity to get their Democrat buddies into office. And so when teachers figure this out, they escape their union and join alternatives like the Teacher Freedom Alliance, which Linda McMahon, the education secretary, just put out a video on this, pointing out a recent Supreme Court decision. Well, it's actually from 2019. But she pointed out that you can no longer be compelled to pay union dues, whether you're in a red state or a blue state. And so there's been a mass exodus of teachers from the union as well. Thousands of teachers are saying, you know what, I don't want to fund Becky Pringle, who makes $500,000 a year, when teacher salaries have been relatively flat over time. The money just goes towards hiring more people, goes towards administrative bloat, which means a larger voting bloc so that the Democrat arm, which is basically the teachers union, can have more influence. It has nothing to do with the teachers even, and we know it has nothing to do with the kids. So teachers are waking up. I think school choice is part of the solution, but we need teacher choice too. And the best teachers need to say, you know what, this isn't working for me. I mean, because the unions fight against merit pay. They fight to protect the lowest common denominator, and it makes everybody else look bad. So the best teachers are leaving.
What you just described has become increasingly common in blue states among Democratic electeds, and that is, it doesn't matter if the programs serve the people they're supposed to serve. The programs are there for the people who work there. The bullet train here in California is something that you can't buy a ticket on because it doesn't exist. It was supposed to be completed years ago, and people were supposed to be able to go from LA to San Francisco in not very long amount of time. That, of course, hasn't happened. It's never going to happen. But if you call the program a failure, Newsom and his team will snap at you and go, no, it's not a failure. It employs this many people, and this many people serve on the board, and this many people have been able to sell property to the high-speed rail authority. And they go down the list of all the people who have benefited from the state spending money, but none of them are train riders because you can't buy a ticket on that train. The same thing is true with all these homeless services non-for-profits, where we spend more money on all of these non-for-profits, and the number of people living on the streets gets larger, and they gobble it up. And every so often you see someone living in Beverly Hills get arrested because they've been stealing the money and they've been spending it on themselves, and they still have money just showered upon them by different layers of government, the state, the city, the county, doesn't matter. And they don't regard these programs as being failures. They regard these programs as being successful. They honor them whenever they have these award ceremonies. Many of them end up running for public office themselves. It's not seen as a black mark on your record. It's seen as a credential. At what point did the Democratic Party, and the New Deal Democrats certainly weren't like this. They seem to really care about helping the people that they claim to care about. But at some point, that got bastardized to everything is meant for the administration to gobble it up. And if the administration gets rich and fat, dumb, and happy, then that's success. And if they don't, then that's failure.
Yeah, the problem is, people on the other side of the issue have not done a good job at mobilizing factions against each other. So the Democrats have said, oh, look, we've created all these jobs and we have this administrative bloat. But, at least in the education industry, there's a way to mobilize the teachers against the administrators. Because if you think about it, since 1970, you look at where the money goes. We've increased per student spending nationwide by 170% in real terms. But teacher salaries have actually been pretty flat. They've only increased by about 3%. And so the Democrats will turn around and say, oh, well, this is because the Republicans are defunding education. But the thing is, we've thrown more money at the problem every single year. It's just not making its way to the teachers because there's no incentive for a monopoly to spend money wisely. So what do? Instead of putting it towards important educational resources like teachers in the classroom, it goes towards superintendents who are making more than the president of the United States. I mean, since 2000, we have data on this nationwide, and the number of students in the system has actually decreased a little bit since 2000. The number of teachers in the system has increased by about 10%, but the number of administrators in the system has increased by 95%. And so I think, there's a way to create kind of losses from these policy shifts that the Democrats are pushing, but we have to shine a spotlight on it because they're only putting the spotlight on the new jobs they're creating. They're not putting a spotlight on the losses from spending that money in a horrible way. Because if you didn't hire so many additional administrators, well, you could afford to pay teachers better. They wouldn't have to dig into their pockets every year to pay for supplies. And, if you gave them merit pay, the best teachers would be very happy about that, and they'd stay in the profession.
Corey Deangelis, National Director of Research at the American Federation for Children. You can get him online at federationforchildren.org. Follow him on X at Deangelis Corey, and he now has a new gig with the Heritage Foundation, so congratulations on that.
Thank you so much, John. It's great talking to you.
Likewise, Corey Deangelis, everyone. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you're in the Central Valley on the weekends, you can listen to us on the radio.
There are so many different ways to listen to the show. We broadcast live every single day from noon to 3 on KABC in Southern California and KSFO in the Bay Area. Welcome, all you new KFI listeners. We also put up best ofs of the show that run every night on KABC, every morning on KSFO. You can get the podcast of all 3 hours by searching for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. And we also package a special Central Valley focused edition of the Fix California Hour. It airs on Saturdays at noon on our sister station, the big KMJ in Fresno. So if you happen to be driving through the Central Valley, Saturdays at noon, you can listen to the Fix California Hour replay on 580 and 105.9 FM, or go to the website kmjnow.com.
I want to go back to something that you brought up earlier in the hour, and that involves a harm reduction nonprofit COO getting caught embezzling money from the organization to buy herself, well, let's just call it Space Mountain and Thunder Mountain.
She bought Disneyland tickets. She got breast implants. I believe she even got a tummy tuck. And also just started using all of the grant money that she was getting from San Diego to pay for her credit cards.
How much you want to bet she's also a pincushion for all those Ozempic needles?
For more on the nonprofit COO embezzling Narcan money for breast implants and more, here's Fox 5 in San Diego.
A bombshell announcement from the DA's office from Summer Stephan today.
Her office has now filed charges against the former chief operating officer at a local nonprofit that prevented fentanyl overdoses.
Well, prevented is within air quotes.
Yeah, they took money because that's what they said to the electeds. Whether they actually did that, I'm skeptical.
Amy J. Knox now accused of using grant money for things like cosmetic surgery and vacations to Hawaii. Our Tony Shin just got out of court this afternoon.
Do you think the breast implants were before Hawaii?
Oh, of course. Why go to Hawaii with a flat chest if you're going to go ahead and get breast implants at some point in the future? How big are these breasts? Have you seen a picture?
I have not seen a picture of anything below her face.
Okay, so we don't know if she's a normal-looking woman or capable of doing the weather on Univision.
Let's just say the prison garb that she's in, it doesn't really have a chest line.
Okay.
Our Tony Shin just got out of court this afternoon, and he joins us live now with the latest. Tony.
Yeah, Phil and Christina, she pleaded not guilty to several criminal charges, including embezzlement, which, by the way, is a crime she has already committed in the past.
Oh, then how did she get this job?
Well, try to find someone in that non-for-profit world that hasn't been convicted of embezzlement before.
She's a great con artist.
District Attorney Summer Stephan is talking about Amy J. Knox, seen here at her arraignment on multiple charges of fraud. Knox is the former chief operating officer of a nonprofit called Harm Reduction Coalition.
That should be your first red flag.
Is it the working assumption that all of these groups are fraudulent?
Well, even if you look at the ones that are doing their intended mission, like Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, the organization that Barbara Ferrer gives your tax money to pass out meth pipes to people on Skid Row. Do you really think they're using every single dollar they're getting for like the most expensive shatterproof meth pipes, or are they pocketing a vast majority of that money?
Well, and you can't be too successful if you're one of these organizations because then you have no customers. And if you're successful at one of these organizations, you're just killing them faster.
Knox is the former chief operating officer of a nonprofit called Harm Reduction Coalition that was contracted by the county using grant funding of nearly $6 million.
And while it's all great that she's getting brought up on fraud charges, who at the county looked at this organization and said, yes, let's give them $6 million?
Well, I want to know what kind of political ties this woman had, because if you can answer that question, you can figure out real fast how she got that contract.
To distribute the overdose reversal drug Narcan in hopes of preventing fentanyl deaths, especially among the homeless.
Wait, she needed $6 million to pass out Narcan to the bums in San Diego?
I'm telling you, this is just all a racket.
It is also deep.
Apparently, they put up a vending machine, and they had to show people how to use the vending machine.
What? They put the vending machine up on her breasts?
It is also deeply concerning that the checks and balances that are supposed to safeguard the county's large budget and trust funds failed in this case.
Just remember this story when San Diego County and San Diego City put those tax hikes on the ballot, because this is the stuff they're spending the money they already have on. Nonsense.
Maybe she's going to claim that she would put all of their drug paraphernalia in her cleavage, and then people could just take what they need, kind of like an Easter basket.
The DA says after her investigators got tipped off by a whistleblower, those investigators claimed they found evidence proving that Knox used the grant funding as a personal bank account, including nearly $100,000 to pay for credit card bills.
Okay, what was she doing?
Yeah, Knox used that money for knockers.
More than $10,000 to cover gas and electric bills, $30,000 for breast enhancement surgery.
Okay, she didn't go cheap.
No, she didn't. This surgery wasn't done in Guatemala.
That sounds like it was done in Silicon Valley.
$30,000 for breast enhancement surgery, as well as trips to Disneyland. And
well, Disneyland is expensive. She didn't get that pass from Costco.
as well as trips to Disneyland and Hawaii.
It was not a difficult decision to come to the district attorney. I knew that I had to do the right thing for the right reason. And
Tara Stamos is the whistleblower and Harm Reduction Coalition's CEO.
I'm not trusting her either.
No, you know the only reason she turned her in was because she was jealous of Iraq.
She says at first she hired Knox believing she was the right person because of her experience until...
Experience in what? What exactly do you have to have experience in? Passing out Narcan?
She had a prior conviction for embezzlement. You know, that DA should look into that woman's history too.
Until she discovered strange activity with the bank accounts.
it does make me sick to my stomach to think about the things that she spent the money on and to see how, it was so selfish.
Stamos says she had...
Jealous.
You know what? I'm going to go on the record. I'd much rather have all of this money being spent on fake breasts, on Disneyland tickets, and plane trips to Hawaii than to be spent passing out drug paraphernalia in San Diego. Because at least when she goes to Hawaii, it doesn't wreck the county.
That is a fair argument.
Stamos says she had no idea that Knox has a prior criminal history, including a conviction for embezzlement in 2014.
And apparently that gig, she embezzled $500,000 and was in prison for 4 years. But, Johnny, you know how we've banned the box?
Yes, but what do you do when you have a 4-year absence on your resume? What were you doing between 2014 and 2018? I was on sabbatical.
I'm telling you right now, the nonprofit world is how the unemployable makes their money. Whether it's through ambassadors or harm reduction or homeless services, you have a whole bunch of people that aren't qualified to do anything that are getting massive government contracts.
No, it's a dirtbag employment agency.
When she was sentenced to 4 years in state prison for stealing more than $500,000 from a national city construction company. Stamos says the conviction never came up in background checks.
She also has strong support.
Okay, so you went cheap on the background check.
Yeah, don't go cheap on that.
She also has strong support in the community. I would ask everybody that's here for her to stand up just so the court can see.
Oh, that's her lawyer.
Strong support in the community, huh? So who is it? Every guy she met at a strip club?
Knox is now facing 3 felony counts of misappropriating public funds and 3 felony counts of embezzlement. Stamos says because of Knox, dozens of people have died from fentanyl poisoning because her nonprofit had to shut down.
Oh, no.
No, your group shutting down saved the taxpayers money.
After the allegations came to light.
As my life has fallen apart around me because of no funding and no income, just how dare she,
So I'm going to guess this CEO doesn't have any other transferable skills to any other organization because she was only the CEO of a harm reduction nonprofit. And the only thing you have to be good at for that is figuring out how to get government contracts.
Of course not. It's either participate in that racket or this lady will be parking cars at the DoubleTree by the airport.
Now, during today's arraignment, Knox's attorney actually basically said Stamos is the one who committed these financial crimes. We'll have to see about that. As for Knox, she will be back in.
Well, if she's alleging that the CEO is the one that stole all the money, did she also get a breast implant?
It's a good question.
As for Knox, she will be back in court on February 25th for a bail review hearing. Reporting live downtown, I'm Tony Shin. Phil and Christina will send it back to you.
So there you go. The story of the $6 million that San Diego County spent on harm reduction, going to a nonprofit that said, we're going to pass out $6 million worth of Narcan. And that money really went to the CEO to get a boob job, a tummy tuck, trips to Disneyland, and of course, Hawaii.
You know, typically what happens, if you buy something with ill-gotten gains, they repossess it. How do you repossess breast implants?
Sounds painful.
Can you take them back? Or does the county just say, okay, here's the deal. Since we can't pull them out of you, we're just going to let county employees enjoy them? Nathan Fletcher's first? I don't know. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Oh boy, there's a few of these emails that I cannot read, but I'm going to read one of them. Even though it's a pun, it's a pretty good one. This comes from Steven. Screw Disneyland. She should have gone to Magic Mountains.
I woke up very early this morning and I was reading the emails from yesterday that were all about Katie Porter.
99% of those we cannot read on the air.
I laughed out loud in my kitchen for about an hour straight.
You can smell it right here.
Bernie Sanders is in California campaigning on behalf of an SEIU initiative that would soak the billionaires.
Bernie went to the Wiltern Theater in Koreatown to make his pitch for the billionaires tax. For more, here is CBS LA.
Senator Bernie Sanders in Koreatown tonight rallying to support a proposed billionaire tax in California.
And if you're wondering why I'm only playing the rap and not playing you the speech, it's because if you've heard one Bernie speech in the last 40 years, you've heard them all. It's the same beats, it's the same points every single time. You're covered.
Well, if it's Bernie peddling communist nonsense in Koreatown, shouldn't it be North Koreatown?
And CBS LA political reporter Tom Waite is live at the Wiltern Theater, where Sanders wrapped up his event just a short time ago. Tom?
Yeah, good evening to you, Pat and Rudabeh. As you can imagine, Senator Sanders received a rock star welcome, as he often does, from his supporters. Tonight, he said enough is enough, that billionaires' wealth is exploding, and he says it's time for them to pay their fair share.
Never heard that one before.
Something new from Bernie.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders at the Wiltern, welcomed by a rocking crowd.
The billionaire class cannot have it all.
Sanders in town to rally support for a billionaire.
It's funny, he's been on the national scene for over a decade now, since the 2016 election, and he is as loud and cantankerous as ever.
Well, he's also a guy who just doesn't age. I think he looked like that when he was 8 years old.
Sanders in town to rally support for a billionaire's tax intended to backfill big cuts made by the Trump administration to state health care programs.
These billionaires are going to learn that we are still living in a democratic society where the people have some power.
Helping to bolster Sanders' message, Tom Morello, whose band Rage Against the Machine summed up Sanders' cause. The Wiltern was packed with healthcare workers, many from Service Employees International Union, or SEIU. The union is among the biggest backers of the proposed billionaire tax.
They're the main backer because all of the money would be directed to them.
I think the assumption is that the money goes to the general fund. It doesn't. It goes to protect SEIU jobs.
The cuts basically, unfortunately, are going to cause a healthcare collapse.
Crystal Davis works in Pasadena as an optician.
So the reason why we're using the billionaire tax is in order to offset the potential for the healthcare collapse, because we don't want short staffing. We want to make sure that California families have affordable health care.
It's estimated California
Given the fact that these are the people who are out there promoting this, it's amazing that any of us go into one of these hospitals and come out alive.
More billionaires, around a couple hundred, than any other state. If the measure makes it on the June ballot, it would...
He had to correct himself later, by the way. The November ballot. They're collecting signatures. They need them by June, but this would be on the November ballot. In fact, behind Bernie was a big thing that said, vote for the billionaires tax on November 3rd.
It would impose a one-time 5% tax on the assets of billionaires, including their stocks. There's strong opposition to the proposed ballot measure. Many are among the elite in Silicon Valley and from Governor Newsom.
A one-time wealth tax at a state level that almost exclusively goes to solve one problem, health care, and starves the rest of the general fund, that has had already the impact of people moving out of our state.
The debate will be...
Then why isn't Gavin, if he understands how much of a disaster this is going to be in his final year as governor, why isn't he taking a more active role in combating this or getting the SEIU in the room and tell them to knock it off?
Because he wants their endorsement when he runs for president. And also, he would look weak if he campaigns against it and it ends up passing anyway.
Like Prop 36.
The debate will be, if you do the right thing and the moral thing, we're going to punish you. We're going to move. We're going to shut down businesses.
It's not we're gonna. They already did. Zuckerberg's moving to Florida.
Yeah, wasn't January 1st the deadline?
You know what, Florida? You can have Zuckerberg.
In order for this ballot measure to make it on the November ballot, the supporters have to gather 875,000 signatures by June 24th. Reporting live in Koreatown, I'm Tom Waite, CBS LA.
And by the way, one of the strategies now to make sure that this thing doesn't pass if it makes the ballot is to put so many bizarre things on the November ballot that voters get exhausted and they vote no on everything.
I usually vote no on these initiatives. Every once in a while, like Prop 36 or something I like. But more often than not, if it's something confusing, like those kidney dialysis bills that are constantly put on the ballot, you read it, and then you read it again, and then you read it again, and you still don't understand it, I just vote no.
How about those two sports gambling bills a few years ago that were just trying to go after each other's industries?
I voted no on both of them, and I'm a chronic gambler.